Postmodernism, the age of doubt and deconstruction. Imagine waking up in a world where everything you thought was true suddenly isn't. History, a narrative shaped by the winners. Science, a construct, just one way of interpreting reality. Morality, a set of rules made up by those in power. Welcome to Postmodernism, a philosophy that questions everything. In this episode, we unravel one of the most misunderstood, debated, and radical ideas of the 20th century. What exactly is postmodernism? Who were its biggest thinkers? And how is it shaping the world we live in today? It is not just a philosophy, it's an attitude, a way of looking at the world with radical doubt. At its core, postmodernism challenges grand narratives, the big overarching stories that society tells us are true. Religion, science, democracy, capitalism, history. Postmodernists argue that these are not objective truths, but constructed ideas shaped by culture, power, and bias. Postmodernism doesn't just question reality, it flips it upside down. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you thought was true might just be a story someone else made up. That history book you learned from in school, written by the victors, the news you trust, framed by corporations and political agendas, even the words you use. What if they don't just describe reality, but actually create it? Truth is relative. Think about it. What's considered true in one era can be laughable in another. Centuries ago, people believed the Earth was the center of the universe, and that was truth. Today, we see it as ridiculous. But what if some of our current truths will be just as outdated in 100 years? Postmodernists argue that truth isn't an objective, fixed thing. It's shaped by culture, history, and perspective. What's right in one society can be wrong in another. There is no universal blueprint for reality, just different lenses to see through. Language shapes reality. Let's play a quick thought experiment. Imagine two worlds. One where the color blue doesn't have a name, and another where there are 10 different words for shades of blue. In the first world, blue barely exists as a concept. In the second, it's deeply embedded in daily life. That's the power of language. It doesn't just describe the world, it defines it. Governments, corporations, and media all understand this. Why do politicians use terms like collateral damage instead of killing civilians? Why do companies call layoffs downsizing or restructuring? Words are more than labels. They shape how we think, react, and even what we believe is possible. If you control language, you control perception. And perception is reality. Power decides what is true. Ever heard the phrase history is written by the winners? It's not just a saying, it's the postmodern view of knowledge itself. Think about it. Why do we learn so much about Greek philosophy, but not African philosophy? Why are some figures celebrated as heroes, while others are erased from textbooks? Those in power don't just rule nations, they rule knowledge itself. In medieval Europe, the Church dictated truth for centuries. Scientific discoveries that contradicted religious doctrine were banned, and scientists were silenced. Today, corporations control much of what we see and read online. What pops up first on Google? The results that are paid for. Who gets to speak on the biggest platforms? Those with influence, money, and connections. Truth, in the postmodern sense, isn't something waiting to be discovered. It's something manufactured. And the ones pulling the strings aren't always who you think. There is no single meaning. Have you ever watched a movie with a friend, only to walk out arguing about what it really meant? One person thinks Fight Club is about toxic masculinity. Another thinks it's about the dangers of capitalism. Someone else swears it's just a psychological thriller with cool fight scenes. Postmodernism says, you're all right. There is no single interpretation of a book, a painting, a political event. Meaning is fluid. The second an author writes a book, the meaning is no longer up to them. It belongs to the reader. The second an artist finishes a painting, its meaning belongs to whoever looks at it. In a way, life itself is like this. We look for grand meanings, but what if meaning isn't something we find? It's something we create. There is no singular, absolute purpose to life, no universal script to follow. Postmodernists don't see this as terrifying. They see it as liberating. If meaning isn't handed down from some authority, then we get to decide what our own story will be. So, what story do you want to tell? The thinkers who shaped postmodernism. While postmodernism doesn't have one founder, several radical philosophers laid the groundwork for this movement. Friedrich Nietzsche, the God-killer. Long before postmodernism had a name, Nietzsche was already tearing apart traditional beliefs. His most famous idea, God is dead. He didn't mean this literally, but rather that society had outgrown religion and was left without a foundation for morality. His work influenced existentialists and later postmodernists, who questioned whether any truth could be absolute. Michel Foucault, the historian of power. Foucault didn't believe in objective knowledge. He argued that what we consider truth is always shaped by power, whether it's the government, schools, or media. His work explored how institutions control people, from prisons to hospitals to education. To Foucault, knowledge wasn't about discovering truth. It was about who had the power to define it. Jacques Derrida, the master of Deconstruction Derrida, introduced the idea of deconstruction, a way of breaking down texts, language, and meaning to show how unstable and contradictory they are. He believed that language doesn't directly connect to reality. Instead, words only refer to other words, making absolute meaning impossible. Jean Baudrillard, The Age of Simulacra. Baudrillard claimed that in the modern world, reality had been replaced by simulations, fake realities that feel more real than real life itself. He argued that mass media, advertisements, and even politics had become a spectacle, shaping people's perceptions of reality more than actual truth. His ideas inspired movies like The Matrix and Fight Club. How postmodernism changed the world. Postmodernism didn't just stay in philosophy. It transformed culture, art, literature, and even politics. In art, traditional painting gave way to abstract, surreal, and conceptual art. Think Andy Warhol's pop art, where a soup can was as important as the Mona Lisa. In literature, authors like Thomas Pynchon and David Foster Wallace played with fragmented narratives, irony, and unreliable narrators. In film, postmodern cinema blurred the lines between reality and fiction. The Truman Show, Pulp Fiction, and The Matrix all reflect postmodern themes. In media and politics, today, people don't just argue over policies, they argue over what's real. Fake news, deepfakes, and social media manipulation all echo Baudrillard's idea of simulation, a world where truth is constructed, not discovered. Are we living in a postmodern world? Truth versus narrative. Do we live in a world where objective truth is impossible? Are facts now just opinions backed by power? The role of technology. In an age where AI can create fake videos and news spreads faster than fact-checkers, is reality becoming just another story? Does anything have meaning? If everything is a construct, does that mean nothing really matters? Or does it free us to create our own meaning? Final thought. Postmodernism forces us to question everything, including itself. Some say it has led to relativism and chaos, while others argue it has liberated thought from rigid dogmas. So what do you think? Is postmodernism a dangerous idea, or a necessary one in a world full of illusions?